could consider doing, and again, don't do too much of this, is get some low denomination, low cost silver. I would avoid gold, but you could get some gold if you wanted to. What's this useful for in a hard Brexit? To bribe a border guard to get out of England if things go really, really badly. But it's also a way of stabilising the cash currency, how much it's worth. The value of silver and gold will remain steady on the world markets. The value of the pound is probably going to fall. As I said, I expect it to rise again. So I would get a little bit of gold and silver. I would not liquidate your bank accounts and all your retirement savings and put it into silver. I think that's a really huge error. But I would have some percentage of my wealth right now, if I was in Britain, in silver and gold and in cash in my pocket. The other thing you want to do this week is get your European brown passport. You might be waiting, hoping to get your British blue passport, but you do want a current passport. The reason you want a current passport is you might need to leave. If things get really bad and you need to flee the country, it's really easy if you have some gold and some cash and a current passport. It's quite difficult if you do not. I would also advise, and I think everybody's done this, if you are able to get a passport of a foreign country because of parents or living there, really get at that now. That gives you the choice of living in Britain post-Brexit or not. And it's always better to have an option than no option, much like Brexit. So the good news is you should have plenty of Scotch whisky. The bad news is you'll probably not be able to get any wine, or any cheese, or any chicken, or any beef or veal. Now you should have bread. Wheat should be not a problem, so I wouldn't panic too much about the wheat. The same with lamb and mutton. You actually import more in Britain right now than you export, but it's probably equal. You won't be able to get bacon as easily, and it will cost a lot more. Breakfast cereals will not be a problem. Nor will milk and cream. Not that you should drink dairy, but there you go. Bacon and ham, you hardly produce any anymore in Great Britain, so that's probably going to very much run short. It'll be a rich person's item. The same with butter, strangely enough, and eggs. Now where we get really problematic here is fresh vegetables and fresh fruits. They will pretty much disappear from the stores. You may well be looking at a time and a place, Christmas 2019, a small tangerine might well again become a Christmas present for your children. It was when I was a kid, and I'm not that old, and I can see that might be the initial consequence of a hard Brexit. Everybody's focusing on food and businesses and the cost of the currency. Okay, fair enough. And I'm going to show you some food items. But one of the things I would be concerned about if I was in Britain right now is actually the gas supply, the hydro gas supply, the gasoline for the cars and the gas to natural gas. I'd be concerned about them. Significant amounts of them come to you via Europe, and the handling of them is going to be quite problematic with Britain isolated in a non-customs union with the EU. The other problem you might well face is electricity as well. So you might want to consider having 40 to 50 to 100 litres of gasoline locked away somewhere safe. Now, putting it in your garden shed is not a good idea. In a hard Brexit worst case scenario, there will be a lot of crime. So you need to put it somewhere secure. You might want to consider getting a few solar flashlights. These don't cost too much right now, and they recharge in the sun, which is good, so you don't have to do it. And you can also recharge by hand. These are a handy dandy little thing to have if the power's out from a snowstorm. So yeah, get some of these if you haven't got them. You can get normal flashlights as well. They're always a good idea. Normal flashlights like this one. I'm in Canada. This cost me about $3 Canadian, which is like, I don't know, pound? I don't know, something like that. So you can get stuff like this. The problem with these is that you have to be able to have electricity to recharge batteries, or you have to be able to buy batteries. Now if you're suffering rolling brownouts, batteries are going to get off the shelves real quick. So spend the extra cash and get at least one or two of these. And you can get solar powered hand cranked lanterns as well. So I would definitely consider that. The other thing nobody's really talking about is water supply. Now municipal water supplies are actually heavily dependent on chlorine. There is a good chance that the chlorine supplies will run low. With the government being as useless as it appears to be right now in the Great Britain, I would not assume that your water authority has got adequate supplies of chlorine to treat the water. So what you might want to do is something like this. Cases of water are okay, but they actually cost quite a lot. And you're paying quite a lot for your water rates anyway. So you want to go to a camping store and you want to get something like this. This is 23 litres of tap water. I pour this onto my garden every 6 months and refill it. I don't have to add chemicals, I don't have to store bleach. There's plenty of chlorine in tap water, and that's going to give me, like I say, 23 litres of fluid. Now I'd actually get one of these for every member of the family. These are also an ideal thing to keep if you have any sort of water mains issues or fluid problems. The problem with little bottles of water is they actually leach a lot of plastics in. So get one of these, try and get it BPA free, and just use tap water. That should help you for a time being. On a similar topic, if you haven't already, go and get every member of your family a decent sleeping bag. Okay? Now, when I say a decent sleeping bag, temperatures in most of the United Kingdom don't drop below -10 centigrade. So you want to get a sleeping bag like this. Now this is North American, so it's rated down to +5 Fahrenheit. So you want 0 Fahrenheit or -10 Fahrenheit if you're looking for North American. Sleeping bags, when they're rated at a temperature, say most of the British ones are rated at 10 centigrade, right? That's from what I remember. Now that means at 15 centigrade you're comfortable. At 10 centigrade you better have all your clothes on, it's going to be cold, right? So you want to get one rated down to 0 centigrade, and you also want to get yourself some cheap second-hand wool blankets and some spare duvets. It's going to get awful cold if the power goes out because of the grid supply interruptions or in case of natural gas interruptions. So there are two major threats as I see it, because you can freeze to death in April and you don't really want to be uncomfortable, especially if you have to walk to work, because there's a huge problem with gas supply. Gasoline is going to be one of the major issues, I think, in the event of a hard Brexit. Just getting gas into the country and getting it around the country is going to be difficult, at least in the short term. I don't think it's going to be this bad, but it could be. And if it is this bad, it's worth getting a few of this stuff together just in case. And as I said before, all of this stuff actually helps you in the longer term. So if you're not a crazy doomsday prepper, you've probably seen pictures like this, and I'm going to show some pictures of foodstuffs, right? So this is foodstuff that requires heat and water to make it. This is foodstuff that is nice warm, but doesn't have to be. You can open the tins and make sure you've got plenty of mechanical tin openers, and you can use this for food without heating. You want to have a variety of these. If you're going to store food like rices and stuff, get plenty of variety of rices. For example, I have cargo red rice that was cheap. I have some lotus rice here, which is heirloom forbidden. I have red rice organic and some more heirloom. KD, Kraft dinner. I wouldn't normally eat this, but again, if you're able to boil some water, this will actually help out a bit. Good old-fashioned oatmeal is a great idea. If this is in here for hot water added, or hot milk, you should add hot water. Milk's bad for you. But oats, if they are good quality oats, if you pour water into the oats and let it sit for 12 hours, you can eat it without cooking. So yeah, this is some ideas of food that you might want to get. Peanut butter, honey, golden syrup, stuff like that. Remember, bread should be easy to get. You might want to get some chocolate bars. One of the things you might want to consider getting is some seeds, some heirloom seeds, so you can reuse them year in, year out, and you might want to consider having a small garden. If there's a food supply interruption, it's going to hit vegetables and it's going to hit fruits. So you want to make sure that what you're stocking up in terms of tins is actually going to go onto the vegetable side. Again, this will all get sorted out and it won't take too long and it will be fine. So you want to make sure that you're not going to get scurvy, right? You don't want to have food becoming problematic. Now, one of the things that people will do, and they always do this, is they'll try and buy their way out of problems. Now, I'm going to give you an example of some foodstuffs that you should not get for a hard Brexit. first off, don't bother getting camping supply foods. The cost, this one's delicious by the way, the cost per calorie is enormous. If you want to get pre-made meals and get something similar to this, go to the grocery store and buy for £1 or £2 some Indian foodstuffs, ethnic foodstuffs in these little packages. These packages are called Mylan, they last forever. Okay, microwave and heat in less than a minute. You don't need to. You can just eat this room temperature, or you can put it next to your belly for about 3 or 4 hours and it'll heat up itself. So again, you don't have to worry too much about heating with these. Whereas with gazebo beans, you're going to have to heat it up, and for a long time. Most people aren't going to bother getting ready for hard Brexit. They're just going to assume it will be nothing much like Y2K, and that's okay, because it probably will be nothing much like Y2K. However, you do get ice storms, you do get flooding, you do have to leave your house in an emergency and stuff like that. So this video is for people that have not prepped, have never really thought to prep for any sort of natural disaster particularly, but are getting concerned about hard Brexit interrupting their ability to go to Asda's in their car and get food. So the first thing I would say you need to do is prep for currency devaluation, however you choose to do that. The second thing is to prep for gasoline shortages, fuel shortages, and the knock-on effects from that. I think that's probably going to be the two areas that you're going to definitely see issues. Don't plan to drive or fly to Europe or through Europe for a period of 4 to 6 months, because it's just not worth the aggravation. Do get your passport and your passport sorted out in advance. Do make any currency exchanges now, but not large amounts. And it's going to be an interesting experience. Now, if things get really bad, I think you can rely on us in Canada and Australia and America, who are British in our origins. We will send you guys food parcels, right? So remember, you will get through Brexit. You just need to have the blitz spirit, because your government has decided to do something incredibly moronic. Leaving the EU was an okay idea, I guess, politically. Rushing to leave the EU and then waiting 2 years without coming up with a plan that the EU will accept. Remember, the EU is now a lot bigger economically than Britain, and they're going to really pound you. They're going to make you sweat. What they did to Greece, they're probably going to try and do to Britain, as a warning to any other country in the EU not to pull a Brexit. Anyway, good luck. If you have any specific questions about prepping for Brexit, let me know below. If you have any questions, let me know below. Bearing in mind, most prepping videos are actually telling you to prep for like a really bad event or a sudden localized event. Brexit will be a different event. Brexit will be a long, ongoing economic collapse scenario. Very similar to Venezuela. So, you know, you might want to look at how preppers feel about Venezuela and what's happened in Venezuela. That could well be the worst case scenario for the United Kingdom, because you don't really have a choice here. The chances are that even if you do have a second referendum, which I consider to be highly unlikely, and you did vote to stay in the EU, I have a feeling at this point France and probably Germany would vote no. They'll make you reapply formally. So good luck. I hope this doesn't break up the United Kingdom, though in some ways I hope that Scotland does free itself and actually becomes an independent country. That for me would be a good idea post-Brexit. I think it's overdue that Scotland became its own country again, and I'm sure they would like to be in the European Union. My real concern is the troubles in Northern Ireland. I'm really bothered about that. So you might want to look up the 1970s and 80s and early 90s. Look at what happened with terrorism in Northern Ireland. Consider how you might be at risk if it restarts again, and make steps accordingly to try and protect yourself from that. Who knows what that future will be? What we do know is on March the 29th, Great Britain will or will not leave the European Union, and it will or will not leave the European Union with a deal or with no deal. You know, as somebody keeps saying, Brexit means Brexit, and I'm not sure if psychologically most British people understand what that means. Toodles, good luck. it.